In the shadowed wood, I creep unseen, small in form, yet sharp and keen. A friend once trusted, now beware. My laugh may echo, but I'm not there. I vanish quick, both trick and plea. Tell me, traveler, what do you see? Hi, I'm Desirae.
And I'm Myriah.
We're two sisters with a love of storytelling
and the paranormal. And you're listening to
As
the Crow Flies. I was going to say end scene, but that's the end.
Action.
Jumping into Pukwudgies. So what are they? Where are they from? I am going to share a bit more about these tiny little beings. First, though, I wanted to share that they are one of the lesser known cryptids, mythical beings to myself. I didn't actually hear about them or know about them until I was taking in more like paranormal cryptid specific content like podcasts. So it was a little sad once I started looking into it and realized that these beings originate from the same area that I live in currently. They are from the New England general area. And so I was very excited to learn more about them and about my region, really, as I dug in deeper. And I'm very glad to have come across them and be able to share them with you now. So stories of Pukwudgies can be found in various indigenous tribes across New England, the Great Lakes, and Southeast Canadian regions of North America. The name Pukwudgie translates in many of these languages to little people or person of the wilderness. One of the more popular origin stories about Pukwudgies and their relationships with humans would be that of the Wampanoag hero Moushop in the book The Good Giants and the Bad Pukwudgies. Here, they're introduced as small, sly, ugly, and mean, so they don't have the greatest rep. Their daily affairs were said to include plotting mischief, contriving tricks, and concocting villainies. This more or less entailed ruining fields of crops, transforming into mosquitoes and pestering the community that they lived in, and they really enjoyed shooting their bow and arrows, practicing, among, other mischievous things. So if you could say they had a goal, really it was just to entertain themselves at the expense of the humans that they lived around. So once the Wampanoag people were kind of at their wits' end with all of these goings on, they sought the help of a revered giant named Moushop, who then gathered as many Pukwudgies as he could find and jostled them around before just launching them across the expanse of what was called the Narrow Land in this book. So that's referring to the Cape Cod area. While this act provided some short-term peace for the community, the Pukwudgies eventually found their way back to their homes, and they were determined to wreak havoc. They escalated from just being a persistent annoyance, really, to actually committing violent crimes. Well, I say crimes, but really just violence among the community. Moushop's family exclaimed to him that the Pukwudgies were now setting fire to thatched roofs, pushing men off cliffs, and running off with papooses. As a personal slight to Moushop, they also stole 2 loaves of freshly baked strawberry bread from Moushop's wife, Quant. This was a favorite treat of Moushop's that she would bake when it was like fresh strawberry season. So it was a particularly pointed attack towards him, and like retaliation for what he had just done. So the family of giants then sets off to hunt the returned Pukwudgies, but they were not prepared for the trickery that awaited them. While Quant and Moushop were on the opposite end of the land, the Pukwudgies found and startled Moushop's sons out of their hiding spots in the tall grass. Since the Pukwudgies are pretty small, they don't really have the best vantage point in the middle of a tall field of grass. And so startling these giants, getting them to stand up, now all of a sudden they're sitting ducks to the Pukwudgies. So, taking this opportunity, the Pukwudgies then equip their bows with poison arrows and they shoot each of the five sons through the heart, killing them. Once they heard the heavy thuds of their fallen sons, Quant and Moushop ran, outraged and heartbroken, to the tall grass. Once there, they stomped, crushed, and squeezed every Pukwudgie that they could find, leaving very, very few able to escape their rampage. This origin story echoes the sentiments of many of the other Algonquian origin stories that I came across. For the most part, Pukwudgies are usually more of a nuisance or, at best, maybe a deviously playful forest spirit, but they are said to become dangerous and very violent if disrespected. So, exactly what we saw here in this story. This to me sounds much like the tales of European fae and goblins. Along with a shared temperament, their physical appearance bears a pretty close resemblance to those kindred cryptids as well. Can you paint the picture for us, Des?
Absolutely. The Pukwudgie is a curious and unsettling sight to behold. This goblin like creature bears a peculiar resemblance to a small, misshapen man with gray skin and disproportionate appendages. A tangle of wild, matted hair or fur in shades of earthen brown or faded gold. From this chaotic mass emerge spindly limbs and sharp, glinting eyes that seem to shimmer with secret mischief. Its round, frazzled form gives it a deceptively comical air, yet those who claim to have encountered one speak of an uncanny presence that chills the air around it.
I would say beautiful, but I don't think that's the right word. Is anyone else getting Danny DeVito from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia vibes? Maybe that's just me. Anyways, their magical abilities seem to center around self preservation and mischief. The self preservation definitely makes sense for a creature of that size, and I guess mischief is just fun sometimes. So they've been reported to be able to shape shift like we saw in the story where they were turning into mosquitoes, but they can also turn into other kind of forest creatures that you would expect to find in their natural habitats. They can also become invisible, and they have even been reported to cause confusion or forgetfulness in the people that come across them.
So, wow, I did not know that they were that not nice.
Yeah,
I
they're a little evil.
Yeah, I feel like from what we've heard from other things that we've read or like listened to, it's sort of been like, oh, they're just mischievous and that's all. But they killed the giant's kids.
Yeah, that was really surprising, and like throughout the beginning of that story, it also had that air of like they're just kind of like um playfully mean, kind of like a toddler,
Yeah. And
but a little
even
more dangerous. But then like they seem to be pretty vengeful. Like if you get on their bad side, like that's that's the end, or it could be.
And even in these encounters that we're about to listen to, they still have that just like, oh, they're just little tricksters kind of vibe. But knowing this totally makes me think differently about Pukwudgies.
Well, and as I was reading through those stories too, I was thinking a lot about just kind of the situational differences of like obviously that was a very like targeted attack, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
towards the Pukwudgies. So in a way, it makes sense that they would retaliate. I mean, to that level was a lot, but so if you're just kind of happening upon them in the woods, then, you might not be getting that side of the Pukwudgie.
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely don't want to cross them though.
yeah, definitely.
There have been several sightings of the Pukwudgie over history, many taking place in the United States, specifically Indiana. Indiana archaeologist Paul Startzman describes his first Pukwudgie encounter from when he was just 10 years old in 1927. Paul was solo hiking when suddenly a little man half his size popped out onto the trail. This was only one of several of Paul's encounters. Paul went on to interview others who claimed to have encountered these little men and documented their encounters in his book, The Pukwudgies of Indiana. One such encounter described an individual being approached while playing at a park by curious little people, speaking in high pitched voices in an unfamiliar language. Another encounter from an anonymous Reddit user outlines an experience of a mischievous Pukwudgie. While running on a path in the forest at night whilst at a bonfire with family, the user suddenly fell hard. When they looked up after their fall, they remember seeing a small ball of hair tucked neatly in a cannonball like position peering out from behind a tree. The user described suddenly feeling the strong urge to run and left as quickly as they could, ensuring they didn't look back. The next day, they revisited the same path in the daylight to see that it was perfectly flat, leaving the only explanation for the fall to be that mischievous Pukwudgie. Another Reddit user, username suspicious half 5758, describes an experience he and his sister had. Sharing bunk beds in their home as children, they were visited by a quote, 3 foot tall, slightly glowing, grayish blue goblin slash troll looking figure, end quote, wandering through their bedroom, only to lock eyes with them for a moment before continuing straight through their bedroom wall. Years later, when this user was in their 20s, watching a paranormal show, they began to describe the exact figure they saw that night as a child in their room. Once they began to show images of the creature, they were shocked to see it was exactly what they had encountered.
Anyone familiar with more mainstream folklore might already be kind of connecting some dots and, tying some red strings up on your corkboard to other creatures that the Pukwudgies kind of have similar behaviors of. I also came across an intriguing article from John Abbott, who was writing for Culture Frontier, that highlighted a handful of mythical little people that I'm sure we will eventually cover in future episodes. But I thought it was very interesting to hear how similar and then how regionally different these little people were. So if you don't want to wait for us to dive into all of these, I would suggest giving Dawn's article a read. Leprechauns and goblins, of course, make an appearance. The fairies that I already mentioned seem like an obvious connection as well, but they had a good amount of global diversity. So their list starts with the Huldafolk of Iceland, moving down to the Chanakh of Aztec origin, the Menehune of Polynesia, and the Tikaloshe of the Bantu peoples in South Africa. So there's definitely not a shortage of folklore. I mean, this is just quote unquote little people folklore right now, and we've already got a whole list to expand on. So we are very excited to be sharing this with you, and we can't wait to bring you along the ride for so much more to come.
Inquiring minds want to know, have you ever experienced a Pukwudgie? If you have any stories about Pukwudgie encounters, paranormal experiences, or other cryptic experiences, then send us an email. We'd love to hear about it, and maybe we'll even read your story. Reach out to us at asthecrowflies.pod@gmail.com with any stories you want to share.